The sun filtered gently through the living room windows of the Miller home, casting a warm glow across the wooden floor. It was a quiet afternoon in the peaceful suburb of Fairview, Ohio. Emma Miller had just finished folding a fresh load of laundry, while her 10-month-old daughter Ella played cheerfully on a padded mat nearby. The house was calm, filled only with the soft jingling of Ella's toys and the occasional hum of the washing machine running in the background. Their German shepherd, Max, lay nearby, eyes half closed but ears alert, keeping watch over the baby. Max had been part of the family for nearly 5 years. Though he looked like a fierce protector to strangers, he was gentle and incredibly loyalist. When it came to Ella, since the day she was born, Max had barely left her side. Wherever she crawled, Max followed. If she cried, he was the first to respond, tail wagging, trying to comfort her in his own way. As Emma sipped her coffee and watched her baby and dog, she felt content. Life wasn't perfect, but moments like these made everything feel just right. That peaceful stillness was suddenly interrupted by a soft thudding sound, barely audible, but strange enough to make her pause. It came from the laundry room, where their aging washer had been making odd noises for weeks. She rolled her eyes. "That washer's about ready to retire," she mumbled, setting her mug down. She stood to check on it, but before she could take a step, Ella burst into a sudden squeal of laughter. Emma looked down and noticed something odd. Max wasn't next to her anymore. That was unusual. Max never strayed far when Ella was playing. Emma called out casually, "Max, where'd you go, buddy?" No answer. She walked into the hallway and checked the kitchen. No sign of Max. The back door was still shut tight. The gate in the yard was locked, and there was no way he could have slipped outside without someone noticing. Emma's pace quickened. She checked the garage, then the bedrooms. She even opened closets, calling his name louder each time. "Max, come on, boy, where are you?" Now holding Ella in one arm, she retraced her steps, her voice edged with concern. Ella seemed to sense her mother's worry. She stopped babbling and instead clung to Emma's shirt, resting her head on her shoulder. Emma's thoughts raced. Max had never disappeared like this. He wasn't the type of dog to hide or wander off without a reason. Then Emma heard the thud again, closer this time. She froze and turned her attention to the laundry room. The door was ajar. Slowly she pushed it open. What she saw made her gasp. The washing machine's door was slightly open, but something blocked it from closing entirely. Inside, behind the thick glass of the washer drum, were 2 wide, terrified eyes. Emma's heart dropped. Max was trapped inside. His body was curled awkwardly in the drum, his tail pressed against the back, and his snout close to the door. He wasn't whimpering, but his breathing looked shallow, and his gaze darted frantically. The old washer had apparently malfunctioned mid-cycle, locking itself up right after Max had somehow climbed in. Maybe it was the warmth from the previous load, or his curious nature, but whatever the reason, he was now stuck. Emma cried out in shock, nearly dropping her phone as she scrambled to figure out how this had happened. She gently touched the glass, trying to calm him. "Oh my God, Max, how did you even get in there?" Ella, still in her arms, pointed at the machine and let out a concerned whimper. Max's eyes followed the baby's movement. It was as if seeing Ella gave him a brief moment of comfort. Emma tried pulling the door, but it wouldn't budge. The latch was jammed tight, possibly damaged when Max shifted inside. She looked around for tools, panic building. Max had been inside for who knows how long. He needed help fast. With trembling fingers, Emma called her husband Daniel at work. "Max is stuck in the washer," she said breathlessly. "He's alive, but we can't get him out." Daniel was already grabbing his keys before she even finished the sentence. What started as a normal afternoon had turned into a desperate race to rescue their beloved dog from an unthinkable situation, and no one could have predicted what baby Ella would do next. Daniel drove like his heart was on fire. When he received Emma's call, he'd thought he'd misheard. Max, inside the washer. That didn't even sound possible. But the panic in Emma's voice left no room for questions. Within minutes, he pulled into the driveway, barely stopping the car before sprinting through the front door. Inside, Emma was kneeling beside the washer, her hand resting on the glass door. Max was still curled up inside, his breathing visible. Now, panting heavier than before, Ella sat nearby in her baby seat, strangely calm. Her eyes locked on Max, like she understood something was wrong. Daniel rushed in, his expression a mixture of shock and urgency. "How did this happen?" he asked, crouching down. I don't know. I think the washer door was open from the last load. He must have crawled in, and it locked shut after. I didn't even hear it click, Emma said, her voice trembling. Daniel examined the washer, tugging on the door. It's stuck, really stuck. Emma nodded. I tried. The latch might be broken. Max let out a low whine, a pitiful sound that made Daniel's chest tighten. He wasn't hurt yet, but the longer he stayed in that cramped space, the more risk there was dehydration, overheating, or injury from struggling. Daniel stood up, grabbing his toolbox from the hallway closet. We're not waiting. I'll take it apart if I have to. Emma hesitated. What if we hurt him more trying to force it open? He paused, thinking, then picked up his phone and dialed animal rescue. It rang twice before someone answered. After explaining the situation, they said they'd dispatch help immediately, but they were 40 minutes out. We don't have 40 minutes, Daniel muttered as he hung up. Emma looked back at Max, who was now laying still, blinking slowly. What do we do? Just then, Ella began to fuss. She squirmed in her seat, reaching out toward the washer. Emma walked over to her instinctively, lifting her up. It's okay, sweetheart, she whispered, bouncing her gently, but Ella kept pointing. Her little face was scrunched with emotion. Then, without warning, she wriggled out of her mother's arms and crawled toward the washer. Ella, wait, Emma said, alarmed. But instead of touching buttons or banging on the machine, Ella leaned forward and pressed her tiny hand gently against the glass. Max responded immediately. His ears perked slightly. His eyes shifted toward her. He let out a low, soft bark. Ella smiled and pressed her hand again. Then she reached into her bib pocket and pulled out one of her rubber teething toys, a small giraffe she carried everywhere. She tried to push it through the narrow gap of the door, her chubby fingers gently nudging it toward him. Daniel and Emma stared, frozen. They hadn't expected this, but something was happening, something beautiful. Max let out a sigh and licked the inside of the glass, right where Ella's hand was. I think she's calming him down, Emma whispered. Daniel nodded slowly. She really is. The room, heavy with tension just seconds ago, was suddenly still. The baby and the dog seemed to be in their own world, communicating without words. Max no longer looked frantic. His breathing steadied. His eyes softened. Daniel finally stepped back. Okay, let's not panic. He's okay for now. Emma's eyes filled with tears. He was scared, but she made him feel safe. Daniel looked at his daughter. She's just a baby. How did she even know to do that? Emma shook her head, amazed. I don't know, but I've never seen anything like it. They spent the next few minutes monitoring Max closely, while Ella sat quietly near the washer, her toy still pressed against the door. Max stared at her like she was his anchor, his tiny guardian angel. The washer was still locked tight, but something had changed. There was no more panic, just patience and hope. Then came the sound of a siren in the distance. Rescue was on the way, and with it, a miracle they didn't yet know was coming. Emma stood frozen in the doorway of the laundry room. Her hand trembled on the knob, and her eyes were wide with disbelief. Behind the foggy glass of the front-loading washing machine, two frightened eyes stared back at her. Max. Her heart dropped. For a moment, everything went quiet. The steady hum of the washer had stopped, and all Emma could hear was her own pulse pounding in her ears. She knelt slowly, her hand reaching out to touch the glass. Max didn't move much. His body was curled awkwardly inside the drum, his legs tucked in, and his nose pressed to the door. He looked confused, scared, but alive. Max, she whispered. Oh my God. Max, what are you doing in there? Ella let out a tiny squeal from behind her, crawling toward the room. Emma quickly blocked her from getting too close, gently scooping her up into one arm. Ella pointed toward Max and made a soft sound, somewhere between a whimper and a question. Emma didn't answer. She didn't know how to. She looked back at the washer, tugging at the door handle. It wouldn't open. She pulled harder. Nothing. The latch was jammed tight. The machine had stopped spinning, but the automatic locking mechanism hadn't released. She tried pressing buttons, turning the dial, even unplugging it, but the door remained sealed. Max let out a low whine, his breath fogging up the inside of the glass. Emma's panic grew. With one arm holding Ella and the other trying to pry open the door. She realized she couldn't do this alone. She rushed to the living room, set Ella gently in her playpen, and grabbed her phone. Her fingers fumbled as she dialed Daniel. He answered on the second ring. Hey, everything okay? "No, Daniel, it's Max," she gasped. "He's stuck in the washer." There was a pause. "What do you mean, stuck in the washer?" "He's inside the drum. I think the door locked behind him. I can't get it open. I don't know how long he's been in there. He's alive, but I don't know for how much longer." Daniel's voice changed instantly. "I'm coming home. Right now. Don't try to force it, you might hurt him. I'll be there in 15 minutes." Emma hung up and ran back to the laundry room. Max's eyes followed her every move, but he didn't bark. He looked exhausted, like he had already tried to escape and used up all his energy. She knelt again, pressing her hand to the glass. "I'm right here, Max. Just hang on. Daddy's coming home." Behind her, Ella babbled from the playpen. She reached her tiny arms out and made a sound that seemed to mimic the tone of her mother's voice. Emma looked back, and for a second, their eyes met. Even at her young age, Ella understood something wasn't right. Emma took a deep breath. She grabbed a screwdriver from the drawer, thinking maybe she could remove the door, at least loosen something. But as she began to work, she heard a gentle tapping sound. It was Ella. The baby had crawled back to the laundry room doorway and was tapping on the tile floor with one of her toys. Her eyes stayed locked on Max. She made a soft cooing sound and placed her toy, her favorite, rubber giraffe, on the floor in front of the washer. Then, she reached out with her small hand and gently pressed it to the glass. Max moved. His ears twitched. He lifted his nose toward Ella's hand, closing the short distance between them. A soft thump of his tail followed a small but clear sign that he recognized her, and that he wasn't giving up. Emma's hands fell still. The baby wasn't scared. She wasn't crying or panicking. She was comforting him. Ella giggled, a pure, sweet sound, and leaned closer. Max responded with a slow lick across the inside of the glass. It was the first moment of peace since Emma had found him. The door was still locked. Max was still trapped, but something shifted. Emma realized she wasn't fighting this battle alone. Help was on the way, and Ella, in her own quiet, incredible way, had just given Max a reason to hold on. Within minutes, the rescue team pulled into the Miller's driveway, red lights flashing across the front windows. 2 animal rescue officers stepped out of the van, quickly followed by a technician carrying a compact metal tool case. Emma opened the front door before they even had a chance to knock. "He's in the laundry room," she said urgently, leading the way. "It's our German Shepherd. He's stuck inside the washer drum. The door won't open, and we don't know how long he's been trapped." The team moved swiftly, examining the machine. The technician crouched down and tested the latch. Pulling gently, it didn't budge. He shook his head. "This model has an older locking mechanism. If it fails while closed, it jams completely. Trying to force it could damage the door and hurt the dog. We'll need to remove the outer panel and release the latch manually." Daniel hovered nearby. "How long will that take?" 10 to 15 minutes, the tech replied, already opening his toolkit. "But we'll go as fast as we can." Max was still curled up inside, his breathing now shallower. His eyes fluttered open when he saw Ella crawl back toward him. She placed her small hand on the glass again, this time with more urgency. Max moved his nose toward her hand and gave the glass a slow lick. That quiet exchange spoke volumes. The rescue officers shared a look, touched by the scene. "I've seen a lot of things," one of them whispered to the other, "but never a baby calming a dog trapped inside a washer." As the technician carefully removed the front panel, Daniel and Emma stood close by, hearts pounding. Every second felt like an hour. The tech had almost removed all the screws when Max suddenly whimpered a low, weak sound that sent a chill down Emma's spine. "He's getting weaker," Emma said anxiously. "We don't have much time." The tech paused. "If we rush this, we risk breaking the drum. That could collapse in on him. But if we wait too long..." Daniel clenched his jaw. He couldn't stand there doing nothing. He knelt beside the washer, placing his hand on the door. "I'm going to try pulling the latch from the inside." "Carefully," he said. The tech looked concerned. "If it slips, it could injure his leg." But Daniel had already reached for a thin screwdriver. He slid it gently through the side crack of the washer door, trying to feel the latch mechanism. Sweat dripped from his forehead as he worked slowly, biting his lip in concentration. Emma kept her hand on Max's paw, whispering soft "ENCOURAGEMENTS." Ella, now sitting with her legs crossed, still held her rubber giraffe out toward Max like it was her sacred offering. Her face was serious, her eyes locked on her furry friend. Then, it happened. There was a soft click. Everyone froze. Daniel slowly pulled back, and the door inched open, creaking slightly. He did it, the technician whispered. He released the latch. Daniel and Emma carefully pulled the door wider, and Max slid forward slightly. Too exhausted to stand, but clearly aware that something had changed. His nose touched Ella's foot, and she giggled through her pacifier. Max was free but not safe. Yet, the rescue team moved in to check him. They examined his limbs, his breathing, and his heart rate. Aside from being dehydrated, slightly bruised, and emotionally shaken, he was stable. "He's lucky," one of the officers said. "That could have been a lot worse." Emma wrapped her arms around Max, burying her face into his fur, tears falling freely. Daniel placed a hand on both of them, overwhelmed by relief. Max licked Emma's cheek, his tail moving just enough to show he was still fighting. Then, to everyone's surprise, Max lifted his head and rested it gently in Ella's lap. The baby squealed in delight and patted him softly. The technician stood back, smiling. That dog didn't give up because she didn't give up. Emma nodded, her voice trembling. She saved him. As the rescue team packed up their tools and prepared to leave, they offered words of reassurance, reminding the Millers to keep Max calm and hydrated. But in that small laundry room, surrounded by wires, tools, and discarded screws, something much bigger had taken place. Bond had revealed its strength, and this was only the beginning. The house was quiet after the rescue team left, but a new kind of silence filled the space, one that carried both relief and reflection. Max was lying on a blanket in the living room, his head resting comfortably on a soft cushion. His breathing had stabilized, but he still looked exhausted. A large bowl of water sat nearby, untouched. Emma and Daniel sat on either side of him, gently stroking his fur, checking him every few minutes for any signs of distress. Ella sat nearby, as if on watch duty. Her eyes rarely left Max. She had never shown such focus before, not even with her favorite cartoons or toys, but something in her had changed that day. It was like she sensed how close she had come to losing her friend. Max had been Ella's shadow since she started crawling. Wherever she went, he followed. He'd sit patiently beside her high chair, waiting for snacks to fall, and he always slept near her crib at night. To anyone else, he was a pet. But to Ella, he was more than that. He was her protector, her playmate, her silent guardian. Daniel got up to bring water for Emma. "He's not drinking yet," he said, glancing at the untouched bowl. "He might be too shaken," Emma replied, "or maybe just too tired." Ella crawled forward, lifting her little giraffe toy once again. It was worn from teething, the edges slightly chewed, but she offered it like a prized possession. She gently placed it on Max's paw. Then she leaned forward and did something no one expected. She pressed her forehead against his dot. It was so quiet that Daniel and Emma didn't move. Max opened his eyes and looked at her. A moment later, his tail thumped gently on the floor. Emma covered her mouth. "Did you see that?" Daniel nodded slowly. "She's comforting him." Ella sat back down and waited. Max slowly pushed himself up just enough to lick the giraffe, then nudged it closer to Ella. The exchange felt simple on the surface, but to anyone watching, it was deeply emotional. It wasn't just a dog recovering from fear. It was a baby, showing empathy beyond her years. Emma reached for her phone. "I need to record this," she whispered. She captured the scene in a short video, offering the toy, Max responding with affection, and the two of them lying together as if nothing else in the world mattered. She didn't intend to share it at first. It felt personal, but something told her others might need to see it too. Later that evening, she posted the video on a parenting forum, titling it, "Our baby saved our dog. You won't believe how." She added a short note, explaining what had happened, just to remind people to keep laundry doors closed and check on their pets. Then she put her phone down and returned to the living room, where Max and Ella had both dozed off beside each other. They looked peaceful, like everything was finally right again, but across the internet, something was happening. Within an hour, Emma's video was shared hundreds of times. People from around the country began commenting. Many said the video brought them to tears. Some shared their own stories of pets and toddlers forming unlikely bonds. Others simply said, "This restored my faith in kindness." By morning, the video had over 10,000 shares. Daniel looked at the screen, stunned. People are really connecting to this. Emma nodded. It's because it's real, and it's pure. Over the next few days, reporters reached out. A local news station asked to feature their story. Parenting bloggers posted about it. A pet food company offered to send Max a care package. And in every message, the same words appeared over and over again. That baby and that dog. There's something special. But for the Millers, the fame wasn't important. What mattered was that Max was safe. What mattered was that Ella had shown them a kind of love they never expected from someone so small. She hadn't used words. She hadn't cried or panicked. She had simply reached out with a toy, a touch, and a heart full of trust. And in doing so, she reminded everyone watching that sometimes the smallest acts make the biggest difference. The days that followed were unlike anything the Miller family had ever experienced. Their video of Ella comforting Max had gone viral faster than anyone imagined. Within 72 hours, it was everywhere from social media feeds to morning news shows. But what amazed Emma and Daniel most wasn't just the attention, it was the emotional response. Messages came pouring in from all over the world. Parents, teachers, animal lovers, even doctors wrote to the Millers sharing how the video had touched their hearts. Some said they watched it when they were feeling hopeless. Others said it reminded them to slow down and appreciate the pure love in their own homes. One email stood out. It was from a woman in Colorado who wrote, "I haven't spoken to my estranged sister in 3 years. We both watched your video separately and ended up calling each other on the same day. That baby and dog helped fix something we couldn't." Emma wiped tears from her eyes as she read the message aloud to Daniel. "Can you believe this? Our little Aleshi has no idea what she started." Meanwhile, Max was recovering quickly. The vet came by to examine him and confirmed that aside from light dehydration and stress, he was perfectly healthy. They were amazed he hadn't broken a leg or suffered internal injuries from the tight space. The vet even said it was rare for a dog to remain calm enough in a situation like that, not to injure himself trying to escape. Whatever kept him still, the vet said, might have saved his life. Emma smiled. It was her. It was Ella. Max, as if understanding, rested his head gently in Emma's lap while Ella clapped from her high chair. She dropped a piece of banana on the tray, and Max obediently leaned forward to take it. The routine returned, but with a different energy. The bond between Ella and Max had only grown deeper. They now took naps together, shared toys, and followed each other around like lifelong best friends. Wherever Ella crawled, Max was never more than 2 steps away. Then came a knock at the door. Emma opened it to find a delivery man holding a large box wrapped in bright red paper. "Special delivery from Heartbeat Pet Foods," he announced cheerfully. Inside were dog treats, toys, and a handwritten note that read, "Max is the definition of a loyal friend, and Ella is proof that love starts young. Thank you for reminding the world what compassion looks like." More gifts arrived in the days after: baby books, teething toys, even a brand new washer and dryer set from an appliance company that said, "Let's make sure Max stays out of trouble next time." The family was overwhelmed by the kindness, but through it all, they stayed grounded, focused on what truly mattered. One afternoon, Daniel sat on the floor with Max while Ella played nearby. "You know," he said to Emma, "we always said Max was a good dog, but after this, I think he's more than that. He's part of her story now, and she's part of his." Emma nodded. It's like they've made a promise to each other. Without words, they were planning to keep all the news articles, social media posts, and notes in a scrapbook, so that one day, when Ella was old enough, she could read about what happened, how she, without even knowing it, helped save a life. That night, Emma held Ella in her arms as she drifted off to sleep. Max lay curled at the foot of the crib, eyes watching, ears alert. The memory of that terrifying day in the laundry room felt distant now, almost like a bad dream. But it had brought with it something beautiful. It had shown them what love looked like in its purest form, not loud or dramatic, just quiet, kind, and powerful enough to melt hearts around the world. By the end of the week, the Miller household had become the center of national attention. What began as a moment of panic had turned into a powerful story of love, connection, and unexpected heroism. People across the world couldn't get enough of the baby who helped calm a frightened dog stuck inside a washing machine. But for Emma and Daniel, the attention was still surreal. Local journalists came first, then major news outlets followed. A small camera crew arrived one morning to film a special segment on their story for a nationally syndicated news program. The living room was tidied and rearranged, but the heart of the story remained untouched. Max, lying by Ella's side. The two inseparable as always. That as the interview began, Emma shared everything. From the moment she heard that strange thud in the laundry room to the instant Ella reached out her tiny hand to Max. She held back tears while recounting the helplessness she'd felt, and the pure awe that came afterward. It wasn't anything dramatic, she said softly. She didn't shout or cry, she just reached for him, like she understood he needed her. Daniel sat beside her, nodding. It was the kind of moment you never expect to witness. It changed how we see both of them. The footage from the interview quickly spread online. Millions watched it, most of them pausing their daily routines to feel something gentle and pure. The comments on the video multiplied by the hour. People used words like miraculous, healing, and beautiful. A school teacher in Texas said she played the video for her class to teach them about empathy. A therapist in Oregon said she used it during a session with a grieving child. One night, Emma opened an email from a mother in South Korea. "My daughter has autism. She doesn't speak much, but she watched your video and smiled for the first time in weeks." She pointed at Ella and said, "Friend, thank you." Emma showed it to Daniel, her eyes welling up. "Can you believe this? Our little girl. She's touching people across the world." Daniel took her hand. "She's reminding people how simple love can be." The family even received a handwritten letter from an elderly man who had recently lost his golden retriever. He wrote, "I haven't smiled since Daisy passed, but when I saw Max licking that baby's hand through the washer, I wept. Thank you for reminding me how much love animals bring into our lives." But despite all the recognition, Emma and Daniel kept their lives as normal as possible. They turned down offers for reality shows, branding deals, and sponsored posts. "This isn't about going viral," Daniel had told one producer. "This is about a dog and a baby who loved each other. That's all." What they couldn't turn down, however, was the outpouring of kindness from their community. Neighbors dropped off treats for Max, toys for Ella, and even notes thanking them for sharing their experience. A nearby dog shelter invited the family to speak at a fundraiser, and a children's book author reached out asking for permission to adapt their story into a picture book for young readers. Ella, of course, was blissfully unaware of the fame. She continued to offer Max her toys, cuddled beside him during nap time, and babbled nonsense that seemed to make perfect sense to the dog. Max responded in kind tail wags, soft licks, and an ever-present eye watching over her. One afternoon, while Daniel was recording a video message for a charity that had reached out, Ella wandered over and sat beside Max. She held out her hand, and Max, without hesitation, rested his paw gently on top of it. Emma captured the moment with a photo. She posted it with the caption, "They don't speak the same language, but they understand each other perfectly." The post went viral again, this time with no backstory, no urgency, no crisis. Just peace, just love. That simple image became a symbol, a baby and a dog, side by side, showing the world what connection looks like when it's unfiltered and real. And as the noise of the world buzzed louder outside their door, the Miller home remained calm. In the center of it all were a child and her best friend, unaware of the miracle they had become. Weeks passed, and the whirlwind of attention surrounding Max and Ella slowly settled. The viral videos, news interviews, and public curiosity faded into memory, but what remained was something far more meaningful. Inside the Miller household, life returned to its gentle rhythm. Quiet mornings, playtime on the rug, and Max faithfully at Ella's side no matter where she wandered. The old washer had long been removed, replaced with a safer, more modern unit that locked automatically when not in use. Daniel even installed child-proof latches on every appliance in the house. They weren't going to take any chances again. But the true focus wasn't on the machines anymore. It was on the relationship. That had blossomed even more since the day of the rescue. Ella had grown noticeably in just a few short weeks. Her crawl had become quicker, more confident. She'd begun to stand using furniture for support, taking those first uncertain steps while holding on to Max's sturdy back for balance. He didn't mind. He seemed to know his job had grown. Longer, just to protect her, Max had become Ella's steady guide. Every morning, as sunlight poured through the windows, Max waited patiently outside Ella's door. When Emma lifted her from the crib, Ella reached her arms out not to her parents, but to Max, she'd bury her face into his fur and squeal with joy. It was their routine now. It was their quiet way of saying, "We're still here. We're still together." One afternoon, Emma brought out the scrapbook she'd been working on. Inside were printed screenshots of social media reactions, handwritten messages from strangers, and photos of Max and Elamini taken before the washer incident, but even more after it. There was a before and after quality to everything now, like that single day had marked a turning point in their lives. Daniel sat beside her on the couch, flipping through the pages. He paused at a photo of Ella pressing her tiny hand to the washer door. "I don't think she'll ever remember what happened," he said quietly. Emma nodded. "But Max will." The next day, the family visited a local park. It was Ella's first real outing since the rescue. She was strapped securely into her stroller, Max walking beside her on his leash. People recognized them, some waved, others came up just to say thank you. One elderly woman handed Emma a small knitted toy shaped like a dog and said, "For the baby who reminded us all that love doesn't need words." Emma smiled and thanked her, tucking the gift into Ella's stroller. Max barked once in approval, as they found a quiet bench near the pond. Daniel let Max off the leash in a safe, enclosed area. Ella giggled and clapped, watching her best friend run in wide circles before returning to sit beside her. She dropped her rubber giraffe, the same toy she'd offered Max during the rescue, and he picked it up gently, placing it in her lap. Like a prize, the sun began to dip, casting long golden shadows across the grass. Emma looked at her daughter and her dog, sitting side by side as if they'd been paired by something greater than coincidence. "Some people wait their whole lives to find a friend like that," she whispered. Daniel agreed. They didn't have to wait at all. As the family packed up and walked back home, Max kept pace beside Ella's stroller, occasionally glancing up at her, as if checking to make sure she was still smiling. That night, while tucking Ella into bed, Emma hummed softly. Max settled on the floor beside the crib, his head on his paws. Ella leaned over the edge of her mattress, reaching toward him. With a soft whimper, Max stood and pressed his nose into her hand one last time before sleep. In the darkness, the memory of the terrifying day in the laundry room no longer felt sharp. It had been replaced by something softer, something eternal. A reminder that the truest acts of love aren't always loud or grand. They're often quiet, instinctive, and deeply human, or sometimes not human at all. The Miller family had learned something profound, that even in life's most unexpected moments, love has the power to show up in small hands and wagging tails. And though neither Max nor Ella could speak a single word to one another, their story had spoken to the entire world. Together, they reminded us, love doesn't need a language, it just needs a heart.